Tonight at 10, Boris Johnson's dream of a high-wage, high-productivity, low-tax economy. On the last day of the Conservative conference in Manchester, he spoke of remodelling the economy and of levelling up the different parts of the UK.
That is the direction in which this country is going now, towards a high-wage, high-skill, high-productivity and, yes, thereby a low-tax economy.
Mr Johnson was speaking against the backdrop of rising inflation, a shortage of workers and problems with fuel. Gas prices hit a record high today, rising by nearly 40% until President Putin of Russia promised more supplies. John Atkinson, a care worker who died in the Manchester arena bombing in 2017, might well have lived had medical help arrived more quickly. And in Africa, millions of children are set to be vaccinated against malaria for the very first time.
And coming up in the sport on the BBC News Channel, Sam Kerr on target as Chelsea get their Women's Champions League campaign underway against two-time winners Wolfsburg.
Good evening. The Conservative Party conference, which took place against the backdrop of rising inflation, problems with supplies of goods and shortages of workers and fuel, has ended today with a bullish speech by the Prime Minister. Boris Johnson, whose address was said by critics to be rather light on policy, outlined his vision of a high-wage, high-skilled economy, and he defended planned tax rises to pay for the NHS, while pledging to resolve the problems with social care. But the main theme was levelling up between different parts of the UK. Our political editor, Laura Kuensberg, reports now from Manchester.
They waited from early. The yawn worth it for the faithful. The first self-described superfan there before dawn.
6 o'clock, then me. And then this lady.
As one cabinet minister said, it is all about him. 5.5 hours later, the moment Boris Johnson has been waiting for more than 2 years.
Isn't it amazing to be back here in person?
The first time Conservatives have been cheek by jowl since beating Jeremy Corbyn.
We finally sent that core-droid communist cosmonaut into orbit, where he belongs.
Jokes aplenty. He used the spotlight to entertain as much as set out his ambition to change the country in ways he claims his predecessors weren't brave enough to do.
After decades of drift and dither, this reforming government, this can-do government, this government that got Brexit done, that's getting the COVID vaccine rollout done, is going to get social care done. And we are going to deal with the biggest underlying issues of our economy and society, the problems that no government has had the guts to tackle before.
There is some Tory discomfort about what the party's front row is doing, as families and firms face different pressures this autumn. But Boris Johnson's promising a new way for the country to do business, using the moment to remake an old argument.
The answer is to control immigration, to allow people of talent to come to this country, but not to use immigration as an excuse for failure to invest in people, in skills, and in the equipment, the facilities, the machinery.
Taxing, borrowing and spending right now are high, but he's trying to cast himself as an economic radical, stirring memories of Mrs. Thatcher.
She would have wagged her finger and said, more borrowing now is just higher interest rates and even higher taxes later.
He was cheered for low taxes one day, but the mission for now, levelling up, to make life just as good in every postcode, with extra cash for new science teachers in less well-off areas to help. But then he reminded his home crowd why his personal and the public's experience means more cash for the NHS.
The NHS saved me and our wonderful nurses pulled my chestnuts out of that Tartarian pit, and frontline care workers battled against a new disease selflessly, risking their lives, sacrificing their lives. And it is right that this party that has looked after the NHS for most of its history should be the one to rise to the challenge.
There were pleasers for this crowd too. A crackdown on protesters.
I say they're a confounded nuisance who are blocking ambulances, stopping people going about their daily lives. Pretty is taking new powers to insulate them snugly in prison where they belong.
Push back to calls for the country, for all of us, to reassess how we see ourselves.
And so we Conservatives will defend our history and cultural inheritance, not because we're proud of everything, but because trying to edit it now is as dishonest as a celebrity trying furtively to change his entry in Wikipedia. And it's a betrayal of our children's education.
Boris Johnson might have waited a long time to give this speech, but he seemed in a rush to make it.
But a country that is proud to be a trailblazer, to judge people not by where they come from, but by their spirit and by what is inside them. That is the spirit that is the same across this country in every town and village and city that can be found in the hearts and minds of kids growing up everywhere. And that is the spirit we are going to unleash.
His wife's verdict? You were really good. The ultimate judgment, of course, is yours.
After the agonies of Brexit and the perils of the pandemic, Boris Johnson wanted to use this week to turn to what's next. There could be hard times ahead, but his political dominance here is unchallenged. His party casting his image now.
This party believes it's marching to a fifth term in office.
Oh, it's fantastic.
A leader in command.
Top draw, Laura, thank you.
Very positive, looking forward to the future.
Never short on ambition.
He can lead this country for 20 years.
But as the cabinet cars turn back for Westminster, they're speeding towards the country's problems. Optimism here is one thing, reality another. Looming political dangers wait at journey's end. Laura Kunsberg, BBC News, Manchester.
So how will Boris Johnson's promise of levelling up the economy resonate with voters and businesses? Our political correspondent Alex Forsyth has been to the marginal parliamentary seat of Hastings in East Sussex to try to find out.
Hastings is a town of contrasts. Affluent areas sit alongside some of the country's most deprived. This community group offers play sessions and practical support to local parents. But some upbeat messages can feel a world away when higher bills are beckoning.
As you go, you're checking the prices, get to the till, and it's £15, £20 more a week.
For those who help struggling families, there is real worry about the loss of £20 a week in universal credit.
I fully understand that people should be aware that it was going to be taken away. It wasn't something that was going to be here forever, but there are a lot of parents that have relied on that very small amount of money.
Do you think the government gets it? Do you think it's going to help communities like yours?
We do it's really hard to get up in the morning at the minute for a lot of people.
It has been rough, but yeah, it's good to see that things are getting better again.
For some small businesses, economic optimism can feel far from reality in the face of shortages and disruption. The Yard in Hastings is home to start-ups and independent traders. Here, Rory runs a burger restaurant where staff earn more than the minimum wage and salaries have increased. But he says the owners can't all be on business.
The high-wage economy, it's a good idea to aim for that, but you have to be realistic about things like the service industry. Not everybody has the ability to pay the kind of wages. What you might find at the end of all this is price rises.
This clogs and Swedish lifestyle business says both Brexit and supply chain issues have caused real problems. And while they're trying to shift production here, it's not easy.
We can only do so much. We're taking on one person to help us with the production. You know, how are we supposed to ramp up without any support or advice?
It's not that we don't have the skills, it's that we're taking a lot of time trying to figure things out which aren't very clear.
This coastal community is one of those that can feel overlooked, so the promise of attention in Boris Johnson's speech was cautiously welcomed by some.
I think he's got the right idea, because this does need regenerating.
It all goes down to one thing, money.
Doing a lot of talking, but not doing much action on things.
For this Conservative councillor, any investment must match local needs.
We've got inflation on the horizon, so I just feel that attention to detail on local issues is what central government has to do. The root cause of a lot of deprivation in Hastings is our lack of educational achievement.
Communities like this have been made big promises about the long term today, though some here are more focused on the prospect of a choppy few months. Alex Forsyth, BBC News, Hastings.
As we mentioned earlier, Boris Johnson's speech outlined his long-term vision for the UK economy, promising a high-skill, high-pay future. But with the conference taking place against a backdrop of economic concerns, many businesses are now warning of a difficult run-up to Christmas. Our economics editor, Faisal Islam, is here with me. Faisal, what is the outlook?
So we got a vision from the Prime Minister of a high-wage economy. We didn't necessarily get a new plan to boost productivity. That really matters because if you raise wages without making workers more productive, what you get is higher prices. And we've already got a lot of inflation in the system from various sources. Big example today was from the international energy markets. I think we can see the wholesale gas price now. That's the price that big companies pay for the gas they then supply to homes. You can see they're going up and away. We already know that energy companies have gone bust, up to £2.70 there. It's normally about 50 or 60p. Now, what that means for customers is, well, they're protected from some of that up until April because of the energy cap. But that cap's already gone up in the past couple of weeks, and it will go up again in April. Analysts, economists and insiders tell us by hundreds of pounds, 30 to 40%, which is a huge amount. And it raises questions about whether the government, as other governments have done around Europe, would intervene. That could be costly. It could also cut against climate change considerations. So a real test of the Prime Minister's rhetoric from the energy markets almost immediately.
OK, Faisal, many thanks again. Faisal Islam there, our economics editor. And as Faisal was mentioning, wholesale gas prices in the UK hit a record high, rising nearly 40% in a single day. They went on to fall after that, after President Putin indicated that Russia might boost supplies to Europe. Our Moscow correspondent Steve Rosenberg has more on Russia's contribution to the volatile price of gas.
Europe is facing an energy crisis, spiking gas prices, soaring electricity bills. It's the perfect storm. Low gas stocks after a cold winter, a shortfall in wind power and surging demand as countries emerge from the pandemic. But is part of the problem Russia? Critics say Russia's not supplying Europe with as much gas as it could for geopolitical reasons, to pressure the EU into using this. Russia's new pipeline, Nord Stream 2. It bypasses Ukraine, and opponents say it'll give Russia's Gazprom more power over Europe's energy market.
Gazprom can supply more gas to Europe, but refuses to do that, saying that we will do that if you accept Gazprom's terms of handling Nord Stream 2. That's very simple. This is pure blackmail.
Today, President Putin hit back. It was Europe's fault, he said, that gas prices were 10 times higher than last year because the EU didn't want to sign long-term energy contracts. No wonder the Russians are smiling at their annual gas forum. They know the EU relies heavily on Russian gas exports. Britain imports very little natural gas from Russia, but the UK's been hit too by the skyrocketing prices on the energy markets. Russia's position is very simple. We've got the gas you need, we've got a brand new pipeline to deliver it, so let's do the deal. And considering how acute the energy crisis is becoming in Europe, that puts Russia in a very strong position. And since Europe has committed to a greener future, it may for a time need more gas as coal-fired plants are phased out.
So long as Europe is using as much energy as it is, and so long as it's determined to reach the climate reduction targets that it has set, it's hard to see a future where Europe is not more dependent on Russian energy, particularly Russian gas, over the next 1 to 2 decades.
Like Gazprom's headquarters, Europe's tallest building, Russia's dominance of the energy market is set to continue. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, St. Petersburg.
Millions of children in Africa are set to be vaccinated against malaria for the very first time when the vaccine is rolled out across the continent. Every year, hundreds of thousands of children under the age of 5 in Africa die of malaria, a disease transmitted by infected mosquitoes. Our medical editor Fergus Walsh explains a little more.
This is a milestone in public health. After decades of research and trials, this one in Kenya, at last, a vaccine against one of the world's deadliest infections, malaria. The disease is spread by mosquitoes, which are infected with the malaria parasite. This triggers fever, and in severe cases, organ failure. The World Health Organization said the vaccine would now be widely rolled out across Africa.
This long-awaited malaria vaccine is a breakthrough for science, child health, and malaria control. Using this vaccine in addition to existing tools to prevent malaria could save tens of thousands of young lives each year.
Malaria is a global threat, but around 95% of deaths are in sub-Saharan Africa. Every year, more than 250,000 African children under the age of 5 die from malaria. That's one child every 2 minutes. For more than 30 years, the British pharma giant GSK has been working on a vaccine. And since 2019, more than 800,000 children in Ghana, Kenya and Malawi have been immunised. Trials have shown that it cuts cases of malaria by 40% and those of severe malaria by 30%. But it requires 4 doses, and further booster shots may be required as immunity wanes over time. So it is much less effective than other childhood jabs. But even so, the vaccine, known as RTSS, should have a huge impact.
The RTSS vaccine is a game changer, and it's arriving at the right time. Progress in reducing the malaria burden in Africa has stalled in recent years, and innovative tools and approaches are urgently needed to get the global malaria control effort back on track.
More effective malaria vaccines are in the pipeline, including one developed by Oxford University. Bed nets, insecticides and anti-malarial treatments will also continue to play a crucial role in tackling this ancient scourge, which, despite today's positive news, is far from being defeated. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
The latest on the pandemic now, and let's have a look at the latest UK official figures. And the data shows that there were 39,851 new infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period. Now, that is the highest daily number for a month. On average, just over 34,000 new cases were reported per day in the past week. 6,836 people were in hospital with coronavirus across the UK yesterday. There were 143 deaths of people who died within 28 days of a positive COVID test. 110 deaths were announced on average every day in the past week. The public inquiry into the Manchester Arena bombing has heard that one of the victims might well have survived had he been given medical treatment more quickly. John Atkinson, who was a 28-year-old healthcare assistant, was bleeding heavily after the attack, but was not helped by any paramedics for nearly an hour. Our correspondent Judith Moritz reports.
John Atkinson was a care assistant who helped autistic children and was a big music fan. He'd been to watch Ariana Grande at Manchester Arena and walked into the foyer 12 seconds before it was bombed. As the smoke cleared, John crawled across the floor on his hands and knees. A member of the public, Ronald Blake, went to his side and called 999.
I'm with a man that is really injured. His leg's pumping.
You need to put pressure on it, okay? So have you got anything on you? Have you got something like a tie or a belt? You need to tie it around the top of his leg, all right?
That the evidence I shall give.
Ronald Blake helped John despite having no first aid training.
Had you ever seen a tourniquet ever used by anybody?
Just like everybody else on telly.
Ronald Blake held on to the tourniquet for nearly an hour, during which time no paramedics came to help. Those injured by the bomb were being carried out of the room to medics who were waiting downstairs at the train station next door. There were no stretchers, so John Atkinson was moved onto a merchandise display board, but it broke as he was being dragged out of the room. He was then put onto a metal barrier.
John Atkinson's family thanked Ronald Blake for his heroism, but it was an extremely difficult day for them in court, hearing harrowing detail about the way John gripped onto the metal barrier as he was being carried to stop himself sliding off, and heartbreakingly that several times he asked those with him if he was going to die.
The public inquiry will consider whether John Atkinson could have survived. The court's been told that experts believe that quicker medical intervention could have made a real difference to him. Judith Moritz, BBC News, Manchester.
The High Court in London has judged that the ruler of Dubai, Sheikh Mohammed Al Maktoum, authorised the hacking of his former wife's phone, as well as her lawyer's phones, as part of a sustained campaign of intimidation and threat during a custody battle over their children. Our security correspondent Frank Gardner has more details.
Together, no longer. Dubai's ruler, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, and his ex-wife, Jordan's Princess Huw, now fighting a custody battle in the High Court. It's been revealed today that Sheikh Mohammed ordered illegal phone hacking during a crucial phase of the hearings. Princess Huw's phone was hacked, so were those of her personal assistant, her security and legal team, and even that of Baroness Shackleton, her barrister and a member of the House of Lords. Princess Huw, in white, fled Dubai 2 years ago after learning of her husband's abduction and mistreatment of 2 of his daughters. She applied for court orders to prevent her children from being returned to Dubai. The judgments published here today reveal the extraordinary lengths that one Middle Eastern ruler and a close ally of Britain has gone to exercise total control over the women in his family. The measures have been described as an abuse of power and a serial breach of criminal law here in Britain. The court heard how agents of the Dubai ruler used intrusive spyware called Pegasus, sold by Israel's NSO group to the United Arab Emirates, to infect the mobile phones of the Sheikh's opposing legal team.
What's remarkable about this case is that it shows starkly that autocrats will take this technology, which is allegedly for fighting crime and terror, and use it to do exactly what you'd expect. They target people who they find to be problematic. And of course, it's not a surprise that yet again, a partner is targeted with this kind of spyware.
Sheikh Mohammed has now issued the following statement. "I have always denied the allegations made against me," he said, "and I continue to do so. These matters concern supposed operations of state security. As a head of government involved in private family proceedings, it was not appropriate for me," he said, "to provide evidence on such sensitive matters, either personally or via my advisers in a foreign court." Sheikh Mohammed's global reputation will have taken a hit from these allegations. A billionaire racehorse owner, he remains a giant figure in the equestrian world. But with the court having found that UK law has been broken here, this case poses extremely awkward questions about one of Britain's closest friends in the Middle East. Frank Gardner, BBC News.
A judge in the US has given permission for Prince Andrew's legal team to get access to a confidential settlement agreement, which they believe will negate a civil claim being pursued against him. The claim was based on allegations of sexual assault made by Virginia Giuffre. Prince Andrew has always denied those allegations. Our correspondent Neda Tawfik is in New York with the latest for us.
Well, Huw, now with the judge's sign-off, Prince Andrew's legal team will very soon get their hands on this confidential document that they believe will end the civil lawsuit against him. In a previous court hearing, the prince's lawyer said that a settlement agreement reached between Virginia Giuffre and the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein essentially absolved anyone associated with Epstein from any and all potential liability. Now, Virginia Giuffre and her legal team and Epstein's estate have all consented to handing over that document, and now they have the judge's sign-off to do that. But her lawyer, David Boys, has said that he believes this settlement is irrelevant to Prince Andrew's case. He says that essentially they have the right to review it and to make whatever arguments they want based on it, but he doesn't believe that their characterization is accurate. There will be arguments in this case, another hearing on early next month.
Neda, many thanks for the update there. Neda Tawfik there in New York. Now, tomorrow will mark 20 years since US forces launched airstrikes against Al-Qaeda and the Taliban in Afghanistan in response to the attacks of 9/11. For military families, including, of course, those in the UK who lost relatives in the conflict, it will no doubt be a poignant moment. Private Conrad Lewis was killed in Helmand province in 2011. The BBC's Fergal Keane has been to meet his parents to hear their thoughts now that the Taliban is once again back in control in Afghanistan.
That other country, the place that took their son, is always with them. And they were watching when the end came. In panic-stricken, humiliating defeat.
The shambles that happened at the end is incredible. I don't know how, Western powers, with our joint pedigree and history and military might, could actually let that happen.
All those poor people who were hoping for her to get out, I guess, to get to the West somewhere, and just snatched away at the last minute, and yeah, just terribly sad, terribly sad.
Conrad was Sandy and Tony's oldest child. At the age of 22, he was the 353rd British soldier to be killed in Afghanistan.
What would Conrad have thought of it, do you think?
He'd have been quite angry at the situation. But I think he and quite a few of the other soldiers that I know from that time, they're sort of contemplating what they actually achieved as opposed to what they didn't achieve. They achieved 20 years of hope for people out there. It's for others who've sort of destroyed that at the end.
7 years ago, we went with Tony Lewis to Afghanistan. For him, a journey in search of meaning, and, every day, a reminder of loss.
Didn't know he was here. Oh, bloody hell, son.
Tony visited a school. Back then, girls of all ages could attend. There were 4,000 here, many with big ambitions.
I want to be a very good doctor in the future. I like very much.
How utterly brilliant is she? And her English skills and her ambitions and her joie de vivre. She just wants to live, become a doctor.
Back in Warwickshire, we had news of the school for the Lewises. When a BBC reporter visited this week, he found only girls up to the age of 12 are allowed to attend, and numbers going to school there have halved.
It's a ludicrous state of affairs. And again, you're taking people up to a certain age and then snatching that opportunity away from them. How are they going to rebuild a country when all the girls are educated to just one level?
That word, Afghanistan, what does it mean to you?
Waste comes to mind, doesn't it? There's waste of lives, waste of money, waste of time. But you just have to hope that somewhere in all that is the Afghan people are strong enough to get over it somehow. And how much longer that'll take, who knows?
The Lewises say Conrad died fighting for what he believed in. But they also know now what it is to raise a child, to see them through the joy and challenge of life, and then to see them changed by war, lost to war. Fergal Keane, BBC News.
Tomorrow morning on BBC Breakfast, there will be full coverage of the commemoration of that 20th anniversary. But now on BBC One, it's time for the news where you are. Have a good night.